and our doorbell tagged a familiar face. He wasn't family. The notification arrived with the false cheer of a weather app predicting light rain on a flooded street. Familiar face spotted. Roman. The thumbnail showed our doorway at night, a wedge of hallway light, and a profile my phone had decided belonged to someone we loved. I hadn't trained it to know that face, which is exactly what it had learned. I was on the tram, swaying among tired men pretending to be small. I tapped the alert and watched the clip with the kind of hope that knows it's lying. Roman stepped into the frame carrying a paper bag like a peace offering. He looked directly at the doorbell camera and did something that felt almost tender. He smoothed his hair as if asking technology to be kind. The clip ended with a rectangle of my wife's coat sleeve entering the shot and the door opening like a mouth. I went home without rehearsal. Cities are generous with places to think. I chose none of them. I walked from the stop through air that smelled of snow that had decided not to arrive. In our lobby, the fake ficus leaned as if exhausted by everyone's decisions. I rode the elevator with a teenager who practiced being beautiful in his phone. Our apartment looked exactly like ordinary. Myra had left a candle to be dramatic about Basil. Music was playing at a volume that legalizes lies. On the table sat the paper bag, neatly rolled down. Inside, figs, dark and earnest, the fruit of people who pay attention to metaphors. 2 plates waited like polite witnesses. A wineglass with the kind of lipstick that knows how to look accidental. I put my bag down. I turned the music off. The quiet told the truth. She came from the bedroom fastening an earring, hair slightly disobedient in the way good nights insist on. She stopped when she saw me, and a dozen versions of her rehearsed a dozen scripts behind her eyes. She chose none. "Hi," she said, in the voice that made me fall in love because it refuses to negotiate with reality. "Your doorbell thinks Roman is family," I said. She laughed once, not unkindly. "That's because you never correct it," she said. "You let machines make myths." "What myth is this?" I asked, not moving, not leaning, not praying. "That I needed someone to knock while you were at the warehouse," she said. "That figs taste better when people are brave." "He used his face as a key," I said. "You use schedules," she answered. "You use competence." Sometimes before a fight I see the room tilt. Not because the furniture moves, because your life shifts from one floor to another. I nodded at the plates. "Are we eating," I asked, "or confessing?" "Both," she said, because she's practical even when the building is on fire. We sat, we made a ritual out of slicing figs we didn't deserve. She poured water like it mattered. "He came to say goodbye," she said. "You don't owe me the trust to believe that. I'm offering it anyway." "Is it goodbye?" I said. "Like an exhale or goodbye like a plan?" "Like a door that shouldn't be owned," she said. He said I looked like someone practicing honesty. Then he said he didn't want to be the rehearsal anymore. "And what do you say?" I asked. "I say I wanted to be the kind of woman who didn't require a stranger to remind her body she is allowed to have a temperature," she said. "I say I hate that I liked being watched by someone who wasn't counting." I counted for a living pallets, truck bays, hours that forgot themselves. I had been careful with everything except the life that would bury me if I didn't change the way I used it. I put the fig down. "I want 21 days, I said, because 30 felt like a speech and I was tired of giving speeches. 3 weeks where we admit mistakes before we outsource them. He doesn't visit. The doorbell learns only the faces that actually live here. We make heat at home, on purpose, even if we have to schedule wanting like a delivery window." She stared at me like a map she might finally choose. "And what do you put on the table?" she asked, "besides figs and rules?" Now, I said, and I surprised us both. I put now on the table. Not later when the kitchen is clean, when emails sleep, when I've built a mood. I put the habit of wanting you while you are stirring onions, while you are mascara, while you are not already making it easy. She closed her eyes and smiled the way people do when they've been bruised by accuracy. "Do you want me now?" she asked, not to tease but to inventory. "Yes," I said, and the yes did work no algorithm could have scheduled for us. We kissed there between figs and our bad talent for restraint. It wasn't obscene, it was specific. The edge of the table pressed gently into my hip like a witness. Her mouth had the heat of someone staking a claim and the mercy of someone refusing violence. When we came up for air, we weren't saints. We were competent again, but at the right thing. The next morning, I retrained the doorbell like I should have months ago. I deleted Roman from the familiar faces list with fingers that remembered too much. The app asked if I was sure. I said yes and hated how immediate the triumph felt. Myra brought coffee. She watched my thumb do the terrible mercy and nodded. "Teach it us," she said. Day 4, we failed. I stayed late at work because a truck had decided gravity was a rumor. She went to a tasting because Dash's emails are all caps kindness masquerading as brand. We came home at different times with different excuses. We brushed teeth in shifts. The bed faltered under separate weights. At midnight, the doorbell pinged a cat as a human, and I almost flung the phone into a drawer. "Louder," she said from the dark, "because that's our rule now when the polite version doesn't work." "I hate how easy it is to be correct," I said. "I can be correct until we're dust." "I hate how good I am at wanting without asking," she said. "It makes me feel dazzling and cowardly at once." We turned toward each other like people who had once known that trick and let our knees touch like a handshake. Nothing cinematic, everything earned. The bed decided to forgive us. Day 5 began. On day 8, I walked past the river and saw Roman across the water holding a camera up to the skull of the city. He noticed me noticing and lifted a fig from a vendor like a peace sign, and then set it down, paid and left without approaching. Not weather after all. A forecast with the decency to be wrong. On day 9, my phone surfaced a montage. At home, Myra and Alex. The cover was her hand on my forearm, flower on her wrist, my laugh doing something inadequate but honest to my face. I didn't pick the music they suggested. I picked silence and showed it to her. We watched our quiet on the couch and she leaned backwards into me until the weight of her head felt like a treaty I hadn't known how to request. On day 11, Dasha cornered me outside the gallery and said, "Are you furious with me?" I said, "For what?" She did the tiniest shrug. "For liking the parts of your wife that got louder without you." I told her fury was too expensive. We were paying in practice now. She kissed my cheek like I had answered correctly on a test she didn't believe in anyway. On day 12, the doorbell flagged an unrecognized face. At 6 a.m., the thumbnail showed a delivery guy smiling with the carnation care of someone who has learned how to survive mornings. The package was a shallow box that called me by my full name with the confidence of bureaucracy. Inside, a book of blank staff paper and a note in a handwriting I knew too well. "A soundtrack you write yourselves," it said. No signature. Only the absence of a mistake spelled out like a gift. I left the staff paper on the piano, we don't play, and used it as a place to put our keys. Myra rolled her eyes and then kissed me slowly in the doorway until keys weren't what doors were for. On day 14, we made dinner wrong. The pasta stuck, the sauce broke, the smoke alarm practiced drama. We opened windows. We laughed with the gratitude you feel when imperfection brings oxygen instead of shame. She lifted her shirt to wave the smoke away, and I watched skin find air. "You're starring," she said, pleased. "I'm home," I said, corrected. On day 16, I wrapped her in my coat on the balcony because winter had decided to lean in early. The city sounded like it was rehearsing a gentler version of itself. She tucked her hands into my pockets and said, "I think I was auditioning for rooms." I said, "Keep the part but change the set." On day 19, we fought the good fight. The kind where we don't keep score with chronology, where nobody reaches for last year's knife. She said I micromanaged tenderness. I said she macrodosed mystery. We both laughed like criminals when we realized we were arguing about the thing we'd already started doing better, telling each other before we tell a room. We made out on the floor because the sofa had opinions we were tired of. On day 21, there were no fireworks. We overtipped a delivery kid. We fixed a cabinet door that had been complaining in squeaks. We stood barefoot in the kitchen at 11, eating peaches over the sink like teenagers who had finally earned a private place. She put her sticky hand on my face and said, "Do you still want me now?" And this time I said always, just to see if the world would punish me for the arrogance. It didn't. It kissed back. When the 3 weeks ended, I opened the doorbell app like a person checking the weather for a picnic he already knows he'll take. The familiar faces list held exactly 2. I added hours again, not because it needed it, but because nomming is a ceremony and I'm learning to host. Myra looked over my shoulder and put her chin on my shoulder, the weight that tells me we're aligned because our skeletons remember. "What about Roman?" she asked, not to test, to complete the thought. "Let him be unrecognized," I said. "Let him be the stranger the camera forgets." We did see him again, of course. Cities are caves where echoes introduce themselves as new. It was a Saturday market day, the kind of sun that makes people buy flowers like apologies. He approached with his hands visible, a small, embarrassed smile making his face specific. "I owe you both a thank you," he said, "and a regret I can hold without making it your job." Myra nodded. "Thank you for leaving," she said. "Thank you for not narrating what you didn't take." He glanced at the fruit stand, at the figs, then back at us. "If I'm honest," he said, "I miss being the window." "Become a wall," I said. "Hang art you like, invite people who live there." He laughed, he left. We kept going. Not with heroism, those are for knights with speeches, but with the quiet audacity of people who refuse to decorate their lives with secrets. The doorbell still pings. Sometimes it mislabels cats as old friends. Sometimes it catches us kissing like thieves in our own doorway and stores the clip as if it's a miracle worth rewatching. We don't delete those. A month later, a new update asked if I wanted to share familiar faces with trusted neighbors. I did not. I did sit Myra on the counter and say, "I want you now," at 4 in the afternoon, while the basil sighed and the city rehearsed winter and the algorithm learned nothing useful except the shape of us. I kept the first fig stem in the little dish where I put screws and coins and cufflinks, because souvenirs are not always trophies. Sometimes they're receipts for the courage you finally spent. When I fish for change, I touch that dry twig and remember the night the door tried to call someone else family and we said, "No, we live here." If you need a lesson, teach your devices to recognize only what you intend to keep. If you need a better one, become recognizable to each other without the device. Our doorbell still chimes. It says movement detected, and sometimes that means a courier, sometimes a storm, sometimes the two of us coming back with our foreheads touching, sometimes nothing more than late light remembering our names. The camera is stupid and patient. We are learning to be smart and patient and warm. And when familiar face spotted arrives with my name, with hers, I press play. I let us in. I do not ask the machine to confirm. I open the door with my hands. I let the house show me where heat lives. I make sure it's ours.